Welcome to More Action, the podcast for entrepreneurs, business owners, and professionals. I'm your host, Sheley Brien, and together we have candid conversations with industry leaders to uncover valuable wisdom and lessons learned. My hope is you use these lessons to intentionally take more action in business and life. I hope you share and enjoy. So as you know, here on the show, I am all about sharing exactly what is going on in my life because I know that it is relatable to everyone out there. And this episode is no different. I'm not saying that we're all the same or that, everybody encounters the same thing. But today's topic about making tough decisions, that's something we all do, whether it's in your business, in your personal life, with relationships, in your career, your professional career. If you've been tuning in for a while, I've had many tough decisions with that. But, I feel like the more that we can share kind of these real life, what's going on, it helps everyone around. And so today's episode is absolutely one of those too. But before I get into the meat here, I love sharing the reviews, and I can't say it enough, but thank you so much. When you share a review, take that few minutes of time. It's not even a few minutes. It's literally like 30 seconds, but 30 seconds is a lot. And thank you for sharing those reviews. I wanted to honestly share this one that just made me feel so very good. And this one is coming from, oh my gosh, I love this. This is coming from Taylor Ray. And she's like, I have truly never learned so much, and I mean it. The topics that Sheley dives into are so important and relevant, and she articulates them in the most perfect way. From using real life examples to asking amazing questions to her guests, I look forward to listening to her on episodes each week. Taylor A., thank you so much. That means the world because, like I said, it's all about sharing those stories, paying it forward. How can we all take more action so that we can get towards our goals, right? It's not always about reaching them and high five, here's your trophy. It's like, how can we grow? How can we evolve and become better versions of ourselves? So thank you again, Taylor Ray. If you leave that 5-star review, I will call you out here on the show too. And don't worry, if you don't want me to use your name, you can send me a DM too. I totally get it. But let's dive into the show here. So, like I said, this is all about making tough decisions. And I'm going to relate this one to your business or career decisions, right? Yet this framework that I'm going to share with you is exactly what I do. It can be applied to your personal life. But, right now with our business, I wanted to kind of share how I have come to a decision, and I'll share that at the end. So you're going to want to stick around the entire time. But, tough decisions are something that we face all day long. Some are tougher than others, but we are making decisions all the time. And now when you are in your business, in the beginning of your business, and Chris and I have had numerous businesses. We shut down a whole bunch of businesses. I had a long career in in corporate world and all of the above. But when you start in the beginning, it's so emotional and there are a lot of gut feelings and a lot of ego. And it's honestly for good reason because you don't have much data to review yet. Your business is new, right? Or maybe you're starting a new job. Your career is new. It's exciting. It's fun. You're still working out some of the details. And quite honestly, in the beginning, it hasn't really gotten hard yet. To the hard where you're like, what am I doing? I quit. I don't want to do this anymore. And that's where a lot of decision making kind of comes from that emotional or ego state and those gut feelings. Now, don't get me wrong, gut feelings are good and we absolutely need to follow those because I believe they are little touches of the spirit guiding us. So I don't want to discredit that. Yet, it's a lot of that ego that really gets in there in the beginning. And then once you kind of hit that year two, you're into that year two, momentum. And now you have something new to work with to start making tough decisions, right? You have some data. Maybe you have some confidence. Maybe you have some loss of self-esteem because, something happened, but you have experience. That's the thing. You took the actions to get into year 2, which is a huge milestone. And now that you have maybe some feedback loops, right? Maybe some client responses, maybe just looking at purchasing trends. Maybe it's different market trends. You have feedback loops that can now give you data. You also have obviously financial data. You have some failures. You have some wins. You have experience, like I said. And more likely than not, especially if you are listening to this show, and I know that you're a high achiever too, is that you've probably hit some hard patches. You've had to be kind of in the mud making some of these tougher decisions that honestly, it sucks when you're in it, but man, the lessons that come from it is so freaking good. So you have something new, you have data and experience now. And, regardless of where you are in your career right now, your career, your business, I wanted to take you through my process of making tough decisions. Now, keep in mind, this is what works for me, and I'm sure it will evolve as I do, as I gain more experience. This is something that I actually come back to quite often because I feel like I could do a whole episode on this, is like new levels, new devils. This whole thing, as you grow and as you evolve, it's not like tough decisions go away. They never go away. You're just making them at different levels. But do they need to be like devil? If you have a process or a framework, like what I'm going to share right now, you can kind of approach these new levels, these new challenges, these new tough decisions with a refreshed sense of like calmness and control, dare I say, because you now have a way to go through it rather than just like emotion and ego getting in the way. So let's dive into it. And it all comes down to 2 things. It's reflection based on proof and data. Data. I love data. And it's so funny. I didn't realize how analytical I was, but data and data towards your goal. And my overall goal is to always remove my ego as much as possible. Take the emotion out of it. Remove it. It's something that I know you're probably like nodding your head right now. You've made decisions in your past that were purely emotional, and then you were done. You were like, what was I thinking? It was that emotional ego side taking over. And so this framework, my goal is, and my hope is that it helps you. This is what it helps me. So starting with reflection, it's being honest with yourself. It's calling yourself out. It's truly like, if you don't really feel good with the answer that you are reflecting on with yourself, it's digging deeper. It's sitting with it. And I do this through a series of questions. So I'm going to share these questions with you. We'll actually put them in the notes so that you can like copy them. You could throw them in a doc and ask yourself. Sometimes it's even helpful to like type it out or record a voice note and listen back to it. Listen to what you say. It's crazy what you'll hear, I promise you. But when it comes to reflections, few questions. What would I need to make whatever it is, my decision, be true? What would need to happen for this to be true, right? Everybody loves their business and they're like, yeah, I can sell my business for $10 million. Okay, that, unless you have data, right? All the financial data backing it up, based upon evaluation of the market and everything going on, that is a truly emotional decision. That is a wish. But what would need to happen for that to be true? Okay, well, $10 million, this is what I need. And you could reverse engineer it back into it. Also, making any tough decision, make it true or false. You can flip this question back or forth. Another question that I love is, does this decision get me closer to the goal or does it pull me away? And a lack of decision could do the same thing. So does this decision get me closer to the goal or does it pull me away? Now, depending upon whether you are a product or a service, I think that this question is relevant to either of you, either business type, is how does this decision affect the people or client I am serving. A lot of times we think about us, and I'm the biggest advocate for like put yourself first, but we also need to put it in the perspective of the people that we are serving and how this decision can better serve them. Another one is, who is preventing me from making the decision? I'm over here. If you're on like YouTube, I'm raising my hand. Come join me over here. The community is growing over on YouTube. If you like the visual version of it, is like, who's preventing me from making this decision? P.S. More often than not, it's you. You are preventing yourself from making the decision. So what is it that's stopping you? Really dig down on that one, and you will be surprised what comes up. And one thing that I always love to do, and this is on a reflection side, and I've talked about this, I have episodes on this. It's a famous quote from Charlie Munger, who was Warren Buffett's right hand for decades. He always talked about invert, always invert. So take any decision and then flip it upside down. Flip, like, if I make this decision, if I make this decision, here's everything. If I don't make this decision, here's everything that could go wrong. I love inverting various things, whether it's a tough decision or something that I'm aspiring to be, inverting it. Like we are aspiring to, with this podcast, grow it to 1 million downloads. Okay, well, what would 100% guarantee I would never hit 1 million downloads? And I would list those things out. Okay, well, here's what not to do. So long I do the opposite of all of these, I will get to my goal. Do you see how that's how that invert, always invert works from Charlie Munger? Okay, so that's the reflection side. And you guys, this isn't something that you like sit down over 5 minutes. I know you could be listening to this on a treadmill or driving in your car. This isn't like, oh, let me just answer these. Think about these, settle on them. Maybe think about them in the morning when you first wake up before you start your day and start putting out fires. Or maybe it's right before you go to bed so that you can really kind of let this settle. Maybe even get into your subconscious of like, why, like, who is preventing me from making this decision? And I know if you invest the time, which is one of our most valuable assets, it will absolutely clear it up for you. Remove that ego out. Now, the flip side, data. Okay, so data is something, and this is to each person and your business, right? Or your goals. So for us, cash flow is really important with a construction company. And quite honestly, the more I read and the more I research and the more experience I get, cash flow is, in my opinion, okay, this is Sheley Brien's opinion, is incredibly more important than revenue. Of course, you have to have revenue to be able to get to cash flow. But when you have revenue, if you're not managing your cash flow or your cash allocation, you're screwed. Doesn't matter. So does this add to this decision? Okay. I love asking questions to myself. So I'll be like, does this add to or pull from our cash flow? Incredibly important question. I'm going to flip it too, because does this decision add to my time flow or does it take away from my time flow? Data isn't always just, when it's relating to business, it's not just your financial data. It's just not like a P&L or a balance sheet or anything like that. There's so much data to be able to look at. Now, that leads me to the second half, is like, what data actually tells you whether you're on the right track or not? You need to understand that. And so reviewing actual data, not just your financials, like I said, but reviewing actual data. So for me, like looking at social media, we could check the box every single day of like, I posted, got a reel out, did this, posted on LinkedIn, posted on TikTok, whatever. You did everything everywhere. You're paying your team to do it everywhere for you, whatever it is, and checking the box. Are you going back and actually reviewing the data to see if it's yielding the result that you desire? And when you look at that data, you could be like, wow, this isn't it. One of those decisions for me, this was a while ago, was Facebook. So everybody's like pro Facebook. Honestly, Facebook for me was more of a time suck and it wasn't yielding the results that we wanted for our business. It didn't match our clientele needs. And so we completely changed it. You can argue that as much as you want, but at the end of the day, this is what was best for me. And so I chose which ones. It was a tough decision, right? Because everyone's telling you post on every platform. We do not use TikTok and we do not use Facebook. And so because of that, I was then able to allocate more time, more resources, make those decisions so that the ones that actually yield the result that I'm looking for, we can invest in. Now, one other thing that it's funny, like I said earlier, data is it's you have to look for it now, right? So it's not always there. YouTube, I would say their analytics are fire. If you're not participating in YouTube, I would definitely go over there. And just because even the data, it tells you a lot that you can use across multiple platforms. But I mean, I'm just coming up on a year with YouTube and I have over 30,000 views there. So being able to see what is working, what is relating with my very small audience over there, but I'm having incredible reach, is helping train me on how I communicate. So understanding your data will help you make better decisions on how you allocate your resources, AKA how you are making tough decisions in your business. Use the data. Data doesn't lie. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Data doesn't lie. And so when you look at the numbers, math is math. Now, what you put into that equation, don't fool yourself at all. But when you come back to the data, it's hard to argue against it. And, I remember back in my pharmaceutical days, one of the ways that this was sales, this was like early 2000s into 2010-ish, is one of the ways that I excelled so much is because I sold based upon the data and the merit of the drug in what it would produce for the patient, not just on my relationship. And I won back to back to back to back years. Is because the data is what helped me communicate even better to my customer at the time, which were doctors. And so data is something that it's just a powerful way to remove all of that emotion out. So make sure that you are reviewing that data and let the data oftentimes make the decision for you. And it's become so easy. If decisions are already feeling tough, what data can you use to help alleviate that? So bringing it back, those are kind of two ways that I make tough decisions. Comes down to reflection and data. And, this episode is super timely for this topic because I have been in the thick of it when it comes to this podcast. As you may or may not know, my husband and I, Chris, we run a soon-to-be 8-figure construction company. And as you can imagine, that size of company, the growth that we are having, time has continued to show its face to me again and again, more and more over the last 60 days. And I recognized it and I felt it. I've been here before, right? I always say lean on proof from your past. I've been here before. And I hope that by listening to this show and just the name of the pod, how I rebranded it, more action, that is what I'm all about. I'm also about calculated action, especially when you have new experience. And so when I do anything, I go all in. And I noticed my time flow. You know how I talked about cash flow? I noticed my time flow was out of sorts. And I was being pulled in many directions as we are growing this podcast. We have a family and we have our construction company. And so I took this same process that I just took you through as far as reflection and data to make the tough decision of going from 2 episodes per week down to 1 episode per week for this next period of growth in my business. That's another thing that I got to tell you is when you make a decision, it's not always forever. So right now, when I launched the podcast, I wanted to really hone my craft as fast as I could, doing 1 episode a week was not enough. It was not enough action for me. So I took more and I wanted to grow. And I've evolved over this last year and few months now that the podcast has been out. But now I felt, okay, I'm not being able to give it my all because I'm being pulled over here. Podcasting is something that I love, near and dear to my heart, sharing these stories and experiences from me, from my guests. So I was like, how can I do this differently? Went through this framework I just shared with you. And the best option is for me, instead of focusing on quantity, I am now going in this phase to further hone my skills as a host and interviewer for you by turning my attention to quality. And so, again, in full transparency, I saw this as a very tough decision. Before going through this framework, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm, just like 14, 15 months into this podcast. I can't do this. What am I doing? Like I had all this emotion coming at me. I went through the framework I just shared, removing my ego, removing the emotion, and through reflection and focusing on data, the decision was quite clear. And so here we are. Here on the show, I share it how it is. Here's what it is. I am very excited for this, actually, because the time that I have now is even going into more and more depth on these topics. And I cannot wait to share. I have an interview later today. I cannot wait. This guest is going to be ridiculous. So can't wait to share that. But I hope that this helps you. If it does, don't forget, leave the review, share it with a friend. This podcast is growing because of you guys. We just had incredible downloads last week. Thank you so much. The message is getting out. And just remember that no decision or action is ultimately a decision. Make sure it's the one that you want.